Alright everybody, this is a discourse that I've put off discussing for way too long at this point. I've wanted to talk about it for a while, but somehow things just keep coming up that make me not cover it when I go live. But today, finally, we're doing it, okay? So, those of you who are, around in this sphere, who follow me, Vosh, Shark, Apillo, Demon Mama, Dylan, everybody here, you may be aware of some drama that broke out in the lefty internet space about 2 weeks ago now. Basically, smaller versions of this drama have happened before, but this time it really exploded. It got really fucking big. And essentially, it was because Vosh, good friend of the show, was based. He said something true. He was correct. And you know how it is. You get a lot of hate online if you're correct all the time. I myself have dealt with a lot of the same thing. He said that most men who are falling down, most men and young boys that are falling down the alt-right rabbit hole, so to say, getting into this sort of MGTOW, red pill, Andrew Tate kind of stuff, aren't doing it because they have some sort of deep desire to oppress women and to make them miserable and to laud some sort of power over them, but because they've been conditioned and socialized to think of women a certain way, to think of their sexuality and their virginity a certain way, and our society has basically normalized a bunch of really fucked up ideas to them and then left them with that, really. And the right are the only ones out there with a large media presence that are willing to basically offer these young men who feel as though some of the things they've been taught don't really make sense, right? So for example, if you grow up and you're like, say, a 15-year-old boy, right? 15-year-old guy. Chances are, let's say you're straight as well. 15-year-old guy, you're straight, you're in high school. Chances are you haven't lost your virginity yet, but you feel like you should. You actively want to, and you're probably actively trying to. Would you guys agree that's pretty common? I think that a lot of young dudes in that position don't end up losing their virginity very quickly. I think a lot of them end up losing it in college, when they're college age or their senior year of high school, sometimes even later. And I think a lot of them basically stake their self-worth on it. I mean, hell, our culture does that, right? I mean, isn't there that movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin? Like, the entire premise of that movie's title is that it's pathetic to be a virgin at 40 years old, right? That virginity for men, that older men, it is pathetic to be a virgin. Or should I say it is pathetic to be a virgin if you do not want to be. Men who take vows of celibacy, for example, are seen by our society as being stoic and brave and in some way capable of withholding themselves from some sort of dark temptation or whatever. But if a guy actively can't pursue sex successfully, our society shames that, which I think is wrong. But we also tell young men simultaneously that objectifying women is wrong, and that seeing women as sex objects is wrong. Women don't owe you sex and all of the, very basic, very common, correct shit, right? And then they go out into the world, and they're expected to always be the ones that approach women for courtship. I'll tell you, that's one of the biggest ones that as a guy is the most stressful, is that it is both expected of you as the guy to be the one who is very conscious of how uncomfortable a woman may be when you're talking to them, while also being the one responsible for making all of the ground in sort of flirting, right? Most of the time women don't come to you and say, hey, I think you're hot, I think you're cute, I like you, whatever. That's really uncommon. Usually women don't just open by sending you a picture of their boobs. If only, man. If only. So usually it's up to the guy to be the courtier there, but that also leaves it up to the guy to be the one that has to constantly make sure they aren't pushing boundaries. They aren't making anyone uncomfortable. And while this is completely reasonable and should be expected of people, okay, the way that it's talked about almost talks it up like it's harder than it is not that hard. It's not hard at all to get enthusiastic consent from... Oh. It is not hard at all to get enthusiastic consent from somebody who you've gotten to the point of already being like if you like a girl, for example, and you're like good friends and like you're hanging out and you're having a good time all the time, I've personally found that it's not that hard to get enthusiastic consent. Usually it just kind of happens when you least expect it, you know? Like all of a sudden you just get hit up with the, "Ayo, you want to fuck?" And you're like, "Yeah!" You know? Usually that's not the case, though. I ignored a girl that liked me in college. It was a one-side attraction, but it never went anywhere. I regret not giving it a try. I was a different person back then. Yeah, of course. But my main point is that a lot of dudes start to feel... Oh, can you stop, Luna? A lot of dudes start to feel as though they have been taught a double standard, right? And over again, they will see these instances that without a proper explanation for why these standards exist, with these things they may think of as double standards or contradictions exist, it is very easy for them to immediately think, oh, that's bullshit, and very easy for, from there, propagandists to push them even further. For example, how many dudes have you seen that genuinely don't understand why we have a cultural standard for men not to hit women back, typically? How many dudes have you seen that, like, talk about, like, the double standards, like Squad W double standards when it comes to a woman hitting a man in public? And to be fair, that double standard does exist. You can watch plenty of, like, social experiments that have been done about this, where it'll be, like, a woman in a park hitting her, like, a guy. They're both actors, and it's, like, recorded and, like, stealthily. And it's meant to look like a girlfriend beating up on her boyfriend, physically assaulting him, and like one person an hour will stop to break it up. But if you switch the roles, everybody in the park hordes up and tackles the guy. It's fun. Yeah, like that kind of stuff is definitely the kind of thing that leaves a lot of like dudes who are young and whose only frame of reference for the world being the internet and YouTube videos and TikTok videos and Twitter videos, and God knows what their parents taught them politically. And even if their parents had good political takes, it's possible their parents taught those good political takes in a bad way. That was my case. My mom taught me some pretty good political opinions, but she taught them in such a way that I grew to resent those political opinions. And just for the sake of contrarianism, I started to move more towards the right. Because of how bad my mom represented feminism, for example. That a lot of young dudes have that kind of upbringing, that you can't even imagine what their upbringing is like and how that can motivate their political motivations. Anyway, Vosh ends up being super based and correct, and the left loses their minds. There was a massive amount of drama, but I think the one that I want to highlight the most is that H-Bomber guy also has a dog shit take on this. Out of nowhere, it seemed like every like OG video essayist breadtuber came out of the woodwork to have a bad take on this, which is so sad because so many of these figures I would have assumed understood this because they made the videos that helped de-radicalize me, but I guess they've just gotten comfortable with their massive Patreon checks each month, and it's like, who cares about de-radicalizing people now? Who cares about actually, you know, influencing people, I guess? Let's demonize people who want to do that, I suppose. Anyway, so H-Bomber guy retweeted this, this post. Young men are turning to fascists like Tate because they're lonely, as an idea is really deliberately coy about who has to bear the cost and responsibility for that. So they're lonely thing is a straw man, by the way. Nobody's just saying they're lonely. Certainly loneliness is a factor in it, but there is a massive socio-political net of issues that are tangled together. I like to think of it as like these young men, for the most part, are basically tangled up in a net of these different issues, and the left has the answers. The left can be the scissors that comes and cuts them out of the net, but the left doesn't want to be. The left thinks it's above that, and I hate that. deliberately coy about who has to bear the cost and responsibility for that. It's also designed to frame a perceived loss of status and power as oppression. So you'll notice that this is only accurate if it's directed at like an MRA guy, right? Like if by the issues that men are facing, he means the stuff that like MRAs think are issues men are facing, which is stuff like women aren't fucking them when they want it, then yeah, that's you know, fucked. But if we're talking about what the group he's actually, or I assume this person's a he, I don't know, they're actually referring to here is supposed to be the argument that I know Vosh made, the argument that like the entire side of Twitter on this issue made for that was these men are being propagandized to because they have been primed due to a variety of factors to make them receptive to far-right propaganda. This person's trying to argue, no, they see themselves as losing power in society and want to regain it, because they see the loss of power as oppression. And in some cases, that is the case. But it's not that. They don't see themselves losing power as the issue. They've been convinced that if they do lose power, for one, they've been convinced that they're losing power, which really isn't the case. Two, they've been convinced that losing power leads to bad things happening. Not one, those bad things don't happen, and two, they aren't losing power because they didn't really even have much power to begin with, because, let's be honest, yes, straight white men have a lot of power socially in our society, but the average straight white man is working class, and yeah, it's just... There's a lot of reasons why this is stupid and lacks any nuance and understanding of like how people... No one is born prone to a certain set of political beliefs. The thread goes on. This is the thread that H-Bomber guy retweeted very stupidly. These lonely, sad men who feel the need to turn to fascism aren't longing for companionship and community. They want power and subjugation, and guess who has to pay for it? Like, it feels like another variation of young white men are the most oppressed while thumbing its nose at specific actors like Tate because they're not comfortable endorsing them yet. So this is basically saying that, like, Vosh likes Tate and would endorse him but isn't comfortable endorsing him yet. Because this is subtweeting Vosh. Let's not pretend it isn't. I mean, we're also talking about a longing for impunity to abuse and exploit, and that definitely isn't about sadness and loneliness or being tricked. So, this is coming from pure malice, alright? Well, there's a few places this comes from. If this was tweeted by a man, like one of those leftist, like, male feminist types, this is somebody who is almost certainly a wolf in sheep's clothing, who is just trying to get pussy. I'm sorry, like, the DJ Mule thing, fucking, like, so many leftist guys just end up being, like, leftist for pussy. And I think that's probably the case if this person ends up being a guy. If this person is a woman, or femme-presenting in other words, then I think this is coming from a place of pure hatred for men. Very much like what motivates TERFs. You see, TERFs are motivated by... At the end of the day, in large part, hatred of men. They see trans women as men, and they hate men. And they think men are predators. And they see trans women as predators pretending not to be predators. They think all men are predators, but trans women are predators pretending not to be. And they have a problem with that. That is genuinely what TERFs think. That same level of man hatred is not non-existent on the left. And it's only a few ticks away from leading you down the path to Turfism. Demon Mama has bad takes in this discourse. I'm gonna be honest, every time people tell me she has bad takes on stuff, I feel like it's just her saying something in a way that's like, people are just taking it wrong, but maybe. Send a clip, I guess. A short one, because I'm not going down a huge fucking rabbit hole with this. Anyway, listen, I need you guys to understand, no one is born a bigot. We have to... Demon Mama agrees with you? I have no doubt, yeah. No one's born a bigot. Everybody is a product of the environment that they're brought up in. However, people are also motivated by certain things that... For example, greed. Not everybody is greedy, but many people are greedy. obviously, it depends on who, like, not every millionaire is a greedy piece of shit who holds on to every dime that they have. Some millionaires actually donate a lot of money and engage in a lot of philanthropic efforts to try to improve the world. Not a lot, but still, you know, a fair amount, right? In that same way, I think it's important to recognize that a lot of these dudes are not motivated. Well, some of them are motivated out of pure hatred and whatnot. I'm sure some of them are like actively greedy or actively want power, actively want to maintain some sort of social superiority because they're egotistical assholes. I think for the most part, it's a bunch of people who don't get it being propagandized to by people like that. People like Ben Shapiro know what they're doing. Steven Crowder knows what he's doing. These people know that they're lying. They know that they're twisting the truth and warping reality in order to propagandize to people and meet their ends. Their viewers, though, have been lied to. Have you seen the average conservative comment on a post? They literally live in a different world. It's not because they have some mental illness that leads them there. The vast majority of them have been eating up so much propaganda that they've literally got layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of false history they base their entire worldview on. They think there's been thousands of cases of trans groomers. They think there's been millions of cases of 5-year-olds getting gender reassignment surgery. They genuinely believe these things have happened. They live in a different world because that's the world these right-wing figures have fed to them. And I can't necessarily say they're through and through bad people who are unreachable just because of that. I think they at the very least should have the opportunity to have the actual reality of reality exposed to them before we write them off as completely too far gone, subhuman pieces of shit who shouldn't even be worth, a second thought, right? Vosh has gotten a lot of crap for this. He's gotten a lot of flack, and honestly, it's just sad to see. I wanted to find more posts that kind of fit the criteria that I'm looking for. Most of them are just featuring dumb takes like this, but there's a lot of posts on my subreddit and a lot of posts on Vosh's subreddit that basically explain their people's own experiences falling down into the MRA stuff, the MGTOW stuff, the far right stuff, and how they got out of it. Could have sworn I saw one here. Huh, nope. Anyway, it was a post basically breaking down someone's journey and how they got out of this far-right stuff, and they basically explained it in a way that was so well-worded. It clearly took a while to write out, and they clearly had a long time to write out, think out their thoughts, but, it was so well-worded. It put into words so perfectly a very similar feeling that I had when I was more reactionary-leaning. And it truly is unfortunate how many morally lucky lefties sit on this massive high horse of, acting like they are above those that were ever right-wing or far-right at any point, right? Morally. Because they happen to be in the right place. It's even more frustrating when it's I got into an argument with Sarah, actual Jake's partner, on Twitter, and it was basically the point that was being made was that they were denying that the left has a problem with demonizing men at certain times when it's not appropriate, or demonizing certain aspects of masculinity, or making men feel like they're kind of not welcome on the left, unless they change very fundamental aspects of their masculinity to make themselves less traditionally masculine, which doesn't fly with me personally. And I know doesn't fly with a lot of guys who want to be on the left but just don't feel like they fit in. Of course, that was denied, but of course, tons of guys feel this way, so it's you have a bunch of people who are women on the left telling guys on the left, no, you saying that the left makes men feel unwelcome means that you want us to do something to make you feel welcome. And it's really not that. I feel like it's a really uncharitable view of the entire, analysis of what's going on here. I think it's more so the left and everything that the left basically talks about tends to sound and look very negative in regards to certain groups, right? Like, in ways that it doesn't need to be. Like, for example, defund the police. When you actually break down what defund the police, like that slogan, what the policy behind that slogan stands for, is like one of the most objectively unobjectionable policies imaginable. And yet we put the name defund the police in front of it. The left has a habit of those things. Not just with issues when it comes to policies, but with issues when it comes to social interaction. How people feel as a demographic. Are they welcome in this political movement? And I'm sorry, but if you want... I hate this fucking word. I hate this word. I hate this word. If you want male allies on the left being inherently hostile to maleness and masculinity is not a good idea. Now, this does not mean, and I want to clarify, this does not mean allowing toxic masculinity and toxic men to have a run of the joint, so to say. We should not let go of criticizing toxically masculine behaviors, etc. We should also provide alternatives. We should, when we criticize somebody like Andrew Tate, we should clarify and make clear that finding your worth and finding enjoyment and finding like happiness and self-improvement and bodybuilding and all of that does not make you a bad person. Instead, half the fucking stuff you see about Andrew Tate is about how he's a fuckboy who works out all the, like, criticizing him for his, like, workout and being, like, in shape. It's really bizarre. It makes it feel as though if you're, like, a gym bro type dude, but you want to be, like, it almost makes it feel as though your, like, lifestyle is seen as toxic on the left, to be, like, a big, bulky gym bro dude, you know? And I'm sure, like, people are watching, like, oh, boo-hoo, the big, bulky gym bros, but, like... Have you seen how far right the big bulky gym bro community online is? Have you seen how chuddy gym bro YouTube is? They've got the fucking monopoly. Right wing, like lifting YouTube, like fitness YouTube is pretty right wing. They basically got the monopoly on it. And it's because the left isn't willing to provide alternatives in that way. I don't know what the solution is to that problem, but you know what the solution isn't? Responding to someone saying there is a problem with this with sheer vitriolic hostility, straw manning, being an asshole, pretty much, is what ended up happening. Anyway, with all that said, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving some support. You can do so in a variety of ways. For example, subscribing, ringing the bell icon so YouTube tells you when I go live or upload a new video. But you can also like the video and comment down below, which actually forces YouTube to push my content to more people in the algorithm and really does help out my streams, my videos, my VODs, my channel, everything. A lot more than I think you guys realize. You can also follow my social medias, all linked down below in the description, including my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, fan Discord, etc. And of course, finally, if you want to support me financially and you've got, nowhere else you need the money for, you got nothing else you need it for, you just spare money or whatever, you can always support me financially and go the extra mile by donating or subscribing by hitting the button on my website on the top left there, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or Patreon. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.